loud, so we're recording now, and I'll switch to our presentation. We always have these reactivated sessions. We have these kind of title slides with an image. Typically it's been photographs that I've taken over the years. Not going to waste time talking about the difference between lurkers and active participants in social media, but it did occur to me when I added that image in that there's a chat we could have maybe later about that. But just to summarize these reactivated sessions, the idea is there's more flipped, more focused on activities and more rooted in real world experience by us having additional presenters. So rather than us presenting, we're using guest speakers to share good practice and effective practice and so on. There's a little bit about the journeys that we built as part of this project, but we'll point you to those later. And I think, Lillian, you were going to share your screen from this point, so I'll stop sharing mine just to summarize what people said during registration.
Okay, so I'm going to share my, share the correct screen. That will be a good start. Okay, oops. Yeah, so the next thing that we're going to look at is really what people want to get out of this webinar. And from what we've looked at, we can see that a lot of people are after good practice, engagement ideas. You're going to get a lot of that today. Also practical tips for dealing with social media use, dealing with reluctant learners. We'll make mention of accessibility. We mentioned that in all our webinars. People have asked about safe and appropriate use and creating better learning outcomes for students. Of course, being kind of a learning technology centered focus, people are interested in anything new, anything exciting. But I really liked the person who mentioned how do we create authentic inquiry, create civic activism with students and enhance field work. So that was really good. And so next up, just to kind of mention that at the bottom of the screen, you'll see we're kind of almost on page 19. Ron doesn't like to call these pages. We're on a slide called self-access. And actually, previously, we have already kind of been through a lot of information about social media that you can access on your own. So you can look at our social media and inclusive practice topic on here and use that to prompt your own thinking. You can look at the case studies and research that we've covered previously. And I really invite you to check out the mind map. I looked at it again today and I kind of thought, gosh, there's so much good stuff in here I need to revisit. So lots of good stuff in the mind map, which you can copy and then make your own and expand on. So I invite you to do that. And then we looked at hashtags and social medias that you were, channels that you were using. Do we want to cover that at all, Alistair?
Yes, that was my bit that you're currently stealing.
Okay, so would you like to?
Yeah. So can I go back to the social media and inclusive practice, just because I just wanted to show people so they could see it themselves. So this is in the earlier slides, but to make it convenient for you on this particular page that we're on, and the link to this page is in the text chat now, so you can get that and look at it on your own at any point. But yeah, as Lillian says, social media and inclusive practice go together. Actually, inclusive practice goes with every single future teacher session we've done. But there are 4 key areas that that we look at there. There's the invisibility, the fact that disabilities become invisible on social media. You can't tell if the person you're talking to is blind, deaf, in a wheelchair or whatever, and there's real value in that. And it's social, and so there's ways in which people can participate who might not otherwise be able to to participate, field courses, for example. And because it's social media, it's about media too. And built into the media themselves, there's voice recognition, there's videos, there's cameras, there's text to speech and screen reader technology, all built in to the device. So when you're using that device, you're using something that's got a whole load of accessibility benefits. And so that's an important bit. And if we shut that box down, then we've got a lot of case studies and research, because I know some of you are just interested in what the practice is. Just show me great stuff people are doing, and you'll hear more of that later. But some people actually want to go back and have a look, what was the research? And so again, we've got loads of different links. We've got successful projects in that tab, issues and caveats in the other tab as well. So if we can shut that one down, Lillian. Lillian's talked about the mind map, and yeah, just what we'll ask you to do just for a minute, if you look at I'd like to look at hashtags that you might use for your own personal following. If you use hashtags, then if you've done that already as part of the pre-session, that's great. If you haven't yet, then do open up that page on the resource, and then you can just type in any hashtags that you use that other people might find really useful, because get the right hashtag, you get some great information. That, I think, was all I was going to look at, Lillian. So I think now we can pass on. That's for Lillian, Glenn and Katie.
Yeah. So I think I'd like to introduce Glenn Hurst, who was one of our guests last time. We ran this social media webinar. So I would like to invite Glenn to give us an update, really. He was using Snapchat to promote chemistry. So Glenn, if you're available now, over to you.
Thanks, Lillian. Thanks, Lillian.
Hi, that's fine.
So pleased to be with you once again. I think Katie's actually going to begin our presentation. So over to Katie for the time being.
Thanks, Glenn. Hi, everyone. It'll be a brief intro on my part, and then I will briefly hand over to Glenn. Firstly, thank you, Lillian, and everyone for giving us the opportunity to speak about our work today. And we are going to be talking about how we've done some recent work into using social media, and in particular TikTok, along with a systems thinking teaching approach to not only use as a teaching tool in the classroom, but also to facilitate scientific public engagement, and also how to encourage other people to learn about chemistry by doing chemistry at home. If you could please click to the next slide for us, Lillian. Thank you. So in terms of just to briefly summarise what we'll discuss today, I will hand over to Glenn after this, where he'll introduce what is system thinking, how we can use it to teach, and he'll discuss also previous work, as Lillian's already hinted about, into using Snapchat as a tool for teaching. I will then briefly discuss TikTok, why we wanted to use this, and how we thought this, along with systems thinking, could be used to teach. I'll then discuss how we did combine these together and the results we got in using these two together. And then finally, I'll briefly discuss the feedback that we actually got on these videos from the general public and from people who have some chemistry knowledge and some who don't. I'm just going to send in the chat some links, as there are some video audios that should work, but if for some reason you find they don't, I've just sent the links here. I've also sent a link to the actual TikTok account we made and to our publication. So I thought I'd just send that in advance before we go on. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Glenn, please, to give a general introduction to systems thinking and previous work. And next slide, please, Lillian. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Katie. So my research group is really focused on utilising systems thinking as a theoretical framework, which really serves to transition students from having a very reductionist understanding of subject matter, where knowledge may be, say, compartmentalized in various, say, lecture courses, or indeed modules, and really utilizing this framework to transition them to a more integrated, lateral, and holistic understanding of what they are actually studying, so they can see the links between the various pieces of subject matter, which can really be helpful for attaining a more interdisciplinary approach to their learning. And through consideration of entire dynamic systems that interplay with one another, we can really help students into actually achieving that goal. You will see in the top left-hand corner of this slide that Katie and I are both from the Green Chemistry Centre of Excellence at the University of York. And so really this systems thinking approach that I utilize has particular relevance for me in terms of green chemistry and sustainability, aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And of course, in order to achieve these 17 goals that are effectively the global challenges facing our planet, we're going to have the scientists, engineers, and policymakers of tomorrow to be able to work in a more interdisciplinary fashion that of course relies on utilizing this systems thinking framework. And you can see the various modalities that I utilize to try to achieve systems thinking. And as part of this presentation, we're going to specifically look at technology, and as part of that, social media. Next slide, please. So the last time I presented at a Future Teacher webinar, I think it was around 2 years ago now, this was my work utilizing a platform called Snapchat. So this is a photo and video messaging app. And this, unlike what we're going to be talking about this afternoon, was a very much instructor-led approach. So I effectively created a class account that all of my undergraduates had access to. And the idea was to simply engage them in the chemistry that I was teaching them within lectures, and allow them to contextualize why that chemistry is important and how it's going to affect their everyday lives. And so you can see examples in the bottom left there. So that's me playing golf and saying how pleased I was to my pitch to the green from 100 and odd yards or so, while talking about polybutadiene, which is one of the polymers that comprises of golf balls. So that's an example of that contextualization. In the bottom right, you can see we also used it as a tool to give students a glimpse into the research going on in our laboratories at York, and also further afield. So that bottom right picture was me in Brazil, constructing green chemistry experiments in the Amazon rainforest there. So that was a very much instructor-led approach, where students simply followed the account through their personal devices and received updates in various areas. But really what we're going to be talking to you about now is a much more students as partners approach. And for that, we've used a platform called TikTok, which Katie will now outline for you. Over to you, Katie.
Thank you, Glenn. So just to give you a general intro to TikTok, in case you're not aware, TikTok is a mobile phone application which can be used on Android or iPhones, but it is also something you can access on the internet as well, so it doesn't have to be done on the phone. And it's kind of been around a while, but it has been seen more as an emerging app for influencers, celebrities, and trends. So on the slide now, you can see some thumbnails, as TikTok is a video-based social media app. So through your phone, you can record videos as short as 3 seconds or as long as 60 seconds, and essentially create a fun and engaging short visual video to either use as, say, as Dua Lipa, you can see on the left-hand side, she used it to start a dancing trend and to also engage with her followers during lockdown. It's also been used by others, shown by the middle picture. There's a certain UK TikToker called Eden who actually has started blogging about life during the pandemic and how she copes. And on the right-hand side, you can see a thumbnail of actually what's quite a comical video. So Lynn, if you could click on it, please, to start it off. So apologies for dropping Christmas in on you all early, but that was just to show you all that it has also been used for comical effects as well. So hopefully that's given you a general intro, and if you could click on the next slide, please. Thank you, and give another click as well. So essentially, oh, sorry. If you go back to the past slide, and then click again on the slide itself. Thank you. So this is all well and good, of course, you know, fun videos, but why were we interested in TikTok? Well, it actually turns out TikTok is currently basically one of the most popular apps ever used on phones, and in fact it is in the current all-time top 10 most downloaded phone applications that has been used worldwide. So firstly, considering we'd had previous luck with social media applications and seeing how TikTok is growing, we thought it was best to try and tap into TikTok to actually use it for a teaching forum. And if you could click on this slide once more, Lillian. We also realised that actually, very interestingly, it is particularly used by the younger demographic. So this is just some American statistics alone, but it turns out that nearly half of the users are actually aged 18 to 24, and it's actually suspected that a decent amount are actually even younger than 18 years old, but due to data protection reasons, they physically cannot judge how many people use this app younger than the age of 18. So with these two facts in mind, we thought it'd be good to not only use an app that is massively growing, but also one that is actually very popular with the young, as we thought if we could use systems thinking and TikTok together to engage young people at an early age with science and with education, this could not only lead to potentially, or maybe not, but may lead to people going to university or wanting to learn more about it, but it gives us the opportunity to reach people at a younger age. Next slide, please, Lillian. And click once more, please. This has been done a little bit before, so it has slowly started becoming an app that people do use for education, public dissemination, and I've just briefly shown some free thumbnails here of actually one TikTok account I really like called Dr. Karana, and he is actually a surgeon in the NHS, and he was on TikTok before lockdown, but it really kicked off after lockdown happened, as you can hopefully see from some of the thumbnails. For example, the right-hand side one, he did a video explaining why a cat had been told, a cat had the coronavirus, but also gave factual evidence to say why this isn't something we should panic about. And he's done very engaging videos with the public. So the two thumbnails you see on the left-hand side and in the middle were videos he created in response to actual questions he got from the community. So for example, is it bad to sleep while wearing headphones? And he explained why it was. And on the left-hand side, someone actually asked him, what does a surgeon do if the electricity actually cuts off? And he responded saying so on and so forth. And so it has been used as a public education tool, and hopefully, as I'll show later on, the reason why we actually also like TikTok is it actually offers you many creative features. So it's not the simple case of film yourself and upload it online, but you can actually use a lot of creative effects to engage your students or engage your viewers, and to very effectively teach at the same time. Can we click on, please, the next slide? So in terms of who was actually creating these videos, I wanted to stress that this was done by Claire Hayes and Catherine Stokes, who were BSc students with Glenn last year. And their research project was into changing the status quo and developing new resources for teaching chemistry. So we thought these two students were the best to firstly investigate, is this a good idea and what video should we make? So if you could click on the slide itself, please, Lillian. So they went away and they created a TikTok account called The Chemistry Collective. And I've sent a link to that account, so you should be able to view it on the web browser. Apologies, as I know some people have flagged up they can't access TikTok in their countries. Hopefully you can access the website, at least. If you can't, I do apologise for that. So yes, they went away and created this TikTok account. And if you could please click once more on this slide, Lillian, for me. And that image there just shows you some of the thumbnails of the videos they created. But Claire and Katie went away and created 16 educational videos. They put a lot of hard effort in and went to create many different videos on doing chemistry at home, and also as a teaching video, and to also engage the public in important issues. Can we have the next slide, please? So on this slide actually are currently 3 videos I really wanted to highlight to you all today. Some of which show you how to do chemistry at home, but hopefully over the course of these 3 videos I will highlight how we did use TikTok to create some videos. So Lynn, if you could please start the video on the left hand side, please. Thank Okay, so that was one video of ours, and before I show the others, hopefully you gathered from that video that we used a mixture of different creative tools. So one, we had the floating text. So whilst the video was actually occurring, or whilst you see the hand moving, we were discussing what was going on. We started with a question to actually engage the viewer, and we also had a fun animated GIF of someone looking puzzled. One other aspect we used, as hopefully you saw, that we used slow-mo, as initially we saw a hand going through quite quickly, but then when we, okay, I've just seen this note that you have to move on, won't show the videos, that's fine. Essentially by using slow-mo, we could nicely show how that was done. And I think we have to move on from Lillian, but hopefully we also found that you could use music as well, so something that engaged with it. And if we have time, I guess, for just one more video, I guess I'll pick one. If you could have the lemon peel one, please, if we have time. It's a quick video. Thank you. So again, hopefully you nicely saw we used visuals, music that fit the theme of the video, and yeah, hope that's given you a quick overview of the videos, and I've given links to the account and paper. So yeah, that's it for that slide. Thank you. If you could go to the next one, Lillian, and click once more, please. Thank you. So I'll briefly go into this to say how we combine TikTok with systems thinking. I've given a link to this video, so I won't play it now, but there is a video that we used to highlight how we did this by discussing the disposing of plastic waste. And basically by, in a simplistic view, viewing the system as a whole rather than breaking down experiments, highlighting these interconnections, determinant or social and economic context, we could combine TikTok with systems thinking and relate this to everyday observations. Next slide, please, Lillian. And just click a few times. That's it, that's fine, thank you. So this video I won't show for time reasons, but I've given a link in the chat. But this video nicely showed you how by using liquids or limonene that you could get from waste fruits, you could actually dissolve this plastic bowl as shown here. And actually not have to throw it in the bin. As the video shows, it got thrown in the bin and was crying. However, we then found a smiley egg could dissolve in this solvent. And we did that to not only show how modern research, but to link quite nicely, as Glenn mentioned earlier, how you can use TikTok to create videos that holistically show how you can combine many concepts of green chemistry to essentially combat things such as the United Nations Sustainability Goals. Next slide, please. We then got some feedback on these videos, and if you could just keep clicking the linear thank you so that everything comes up as I'll go through this. We did survey people and asked their opinion on this, and they all nicely said that the use of visual demonstrations of music was very good. An overwhelming majority said they learned something new, 96.5%. Same said they felt inspired to create this at home, and the majority said they'd actually had an increased interest in chemistry and learned something as a result of watching these videos. And in fact, over half of the people who did this survey did not have an education in chemistry beyond school, and some even said they couldn't remember anything from their education. So considering the majority of these were from people who weren't equipped with a higher education knowledge of science, this is very promising. And as you can see from the right hand side, there were just some general feedback comments that we got from these videos. So it was all well and good. Next slide, please, Lily. So to conclude, hopefully I've demonstrated, very briefly and quickly, but hopefully I've demonstrated that TikTok can be used to effectively engage, educate and infuse the general public, as well as of course your students, about chemistry and performance at home. It can be used in conjunction with systems thinking to highlight importances of chemistry in research areas such as waste valorization, circular economy. And if you can use it correctly, we think it can be a new tool to improve chemistry teaching, dissemination and engaging people with chemistry. Next slide, please, Lillian. I just wanted to highlight anything. I didn't get through a lot of what we did in the research, so there is a link that I provided in the chat and also a thumbnail shown here, as the paper we published on this work has come out in the Journal of Chemical Education. And quite nicely, actually, all the videos, researches and data that were made for this came from Claire and Katie, who were BSc undergraduate students. So quite nicely, TikTok can be used to create new ways of teaching and to use students as co-partners in this. Next slide, please.
I think we will need to end because we're way over on to the next guest. Sorry.
No, that's fine. No problem. I didn't hear a bell ring, so apologies about that. But yeah, just wanted to acknowledge those people. If we've run out of time, no problem. I'll take questions another time. But yes,
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's excellent material. I'm sorry we didn't have longer.
So next up, I'd like to introduce Alistair Brown from Durham University. Alistair.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, so are you going to play the slides when I say?
Would you like to share your own screen, Alistair?
I can do. That might be. Oh, I can't while you're showing. There we go. Okay, hopefully you can all see. So yes, I'm from Durham University, from the Department of English Studies, where I have various roles, but one of those roles is as the editor of our kind of social media brand, Read or Research English at Durham. And I think compared to the previous sort of visual dynamic, audible dynamic of TikTok, talking about blogs runs the risk of being slightly kind of conservative and maybe even sort of 10 years, dialing us back 10 years. But nevertheless, I think also what I want to say is about what can happen sometimes when social media gets out of hand and starts to balloon into something that's certainly very useful, but brings with that utility problems and challenges that you need to think about. As well as you can see on the screen, along the way, there will be lolcats, badass women, and an American heavy metal band appearing as well. Okay, so I just want to tell you a story of Read and take us back to 2012, where we were sat down, myself as the department's so-called digital kind of coordinator, our director of research, and the head of the department, facing ahead to the Research Excellence Framework in 2014, and realizing that we basically had no kind of online presence other than a corporate kind of website, and no kind of channel to disseminate and share all the research that we were doing, or to engage with the general public. So as was the kind of default setting, when faced with that kind of idea of needing to disseminate, we decided, right, we'll set up a blog. And I was given total kind of autonomy as to how to do this, what sorts of material to post on the blog, how to run it. And it started off as a kind of fairly modest sort of affair, just posting about the events that we were running, advertising those events, and also talking about new publications from the department, so research articles and books and things like that. But as time progressed, it started to balloon and escalate, and turned out to have sort of utility in all sorts of different and unexpected and serendipitous areas. So one of those escalations, I think we learned very quickly, is that, and this will probably be second nature to many of you, but if you're engaging on social media through the form of a blog, you can't actually just engage on social media through the form of a blog. In the good old days when I started my career as a web developer in museums before moving back into academia, you could just produce content and people would come to it. Now it's all about pushing that content out. So we quickly learned that we needed a Twitter feed and a Facebook page as well. And the two things kind of interlinked with one another. Interestingly, thinking about TikTok and its youth demographic, the demographic on those platforms has changed very much over the last 8 years or so. Over time, we then also realized that we needed to reach our niche audience. So obviously we talk a lot about books and literature. So we set up a Medium account for our longer article type posts, and also started to engage with Goodreads. We then moved into podcasting and vidcasting. One of the serendipitous things we realized is that we already run lots of events in the department, conferences, seminars, public lectures, and so on. And we could use the blog platform or the podcast platform to capture that activity. So to, by default, record things that are already taking place. And we've weirdly found that actually, in a way, our usage of events has shifted from, rather than the event, the live event being the thing, and the podcast being the backup, the live event is actually becoming the excuse to generate a podcast out of it. We typically have about 20 listeners or viewers of the online material to every one person who attends in person. So it's kind of inverted the logic of publicity there. And then another kind of serendipitous development that emerged was the use as a means of recruitment for postgraduate students in particular. So we can kind of feed blog content as a newsletter. And then also we set up a newsletter capturing all the book events, book-related events and literature-related events happening in the northeast of England. So not just ourselves, but from bookshops and libraries and our other universities. I'm afraid we don't go quite as far south as York, but certainly the likes of Newcastle and Sunderland and Teesside. And we developed this newsletter as a way of engaging with our community, and obviously if we're sharing their events, they're also more inclined to share ours, and it was a really powerful way of building some relationships that have subsequently become quite long-standing. But the other key way in which this became evolved really was to become integrated into curriculum. So it kind of speaks back a little bit to the previous talk on TikTok and getting student involvement. We increasingly realized that in terms of generating content, our postgraduate researchers in particular had great value to offer, but also could benefit from learning how to disseminate material online. So we started to integrate this as part of our postgraduate training program, so that people would actually learn how to blog, and then as the output of that, they would produce at least one blog post of their own. This year coming up, we're also doing that within our MA program, within our dissertation module. So as well as writing a dissertation, students will also be encouraged and led through the process of generating a blog post to talk about their dissertation. So it ended up evolving into all these different kind of ways that we could never really have expected when we set it up back in 2012. We have a quite large body of followers to kind of maintain, and an audience to maintain. I'll come back to that at the end of the talk. But to focus on the kind of PhD training angle, which is perhaps the most directly educational angle here, one of the things we realize is that it's actually incredibly challenging, and I'm sure some of you will have the similar experience, very challenging to get people to imagine how social media used to talk about research demands a very different means of engagement. So I think the TikTok is absolutely fantastic because all the tools and the affordances require you to reconceptualize the way in which you think about teaching chemistry. I think the challenge we have as in English studies in particular, because we're a subject about literature and writing, is that a blog looks like it's a word processor. And people are very tempted to try and represent their existing research ideas, their 8,000 word journal articles or their 100,000 word long books, and to try and distill them into a blog post. And as many of you will know, that doesn't really kind of work. So one of the key tips from our training process that we've kind of developed was to think about the importance of reading as a blogger for students. So to teach them some kind of key characteristics of what it's actually like out there in the blogosphere and in social media land. So we throw them with some statistics about the fact that viewers only ever read about 20% of the text on your page. So if you're not getting your story across in the first paragraph above the line, you may as well give up and go home. You're not reaching people. But most page views get less than 15 seconds of attention. So again, the importance of a hook. And then the kind of compensatory statistic, and here's where the cat comes in, the cats drive 15% of all internet traffic, which is a reminder that people, above all on social media, want to be entertained. They might get information by the back door, but it's entertainment above all that motivates. And again, I think the TikTok videos kind of encapsulate that and, quite brilliantly. So we developed lots of techniques, particularly using playful learning. So encouraging people to develop their ideas in the form of Play-Doh or to build a Lego model of what they'd like to talk about, to get them away, to build an interim process between the page they're writing on. I can hear the bell ringing. Was that the bell?
It was a bell, yes.
Oh, okay. The page they're writing on, and to give them a kind of interim step towards reconceptualizing the blog post. So we use these playful learning techniques to elicit the fun. And here's just a few examples of how that outcome comes across for our postgraduates. So here's a journal article about the Poetic Edda, very detailed, very diligent. That emerged as a clickbaity type post. Again, we need to convince academics that actually clickbait's good. Why you need to know about Gudrun, one of the original badass women, which of course then trafficked out on social media and was very popular. The same with a detailed article on music. In literature, we produced a listicle, 16 metal tracks, which then got retweeted by all these American heavy metal bands. So that's the kind of importance, I think, of finding a fun way into social media that modifies, that the academic content remains integral, but nevertheless you have to convince people to find the hook behind it. The bad news, which we won't have time to talk about, I suppose, is the challenges of ensuring diversity of your readership and diversity of your writers when you have a single editor in charge, the sustainability of this, and also the anxiety around, am I sharing the right kind of content? Or am I not sharing content because I'm afraid that it might kick up controversy? So I'm going to just leave those symbols on screen as a pondering point, because if I've run out of my 10-minute slot, I'll pause it there and hand over to conversation to pick up on them perhaps.
Could you just very quickly say about the inclusion bit, the pyramid of people?
Yeah, well, so it's inclusion, but it's also obviously exclusion.
Yeah.
As the thing evolved, it was fine when it was just me editing it and no one's reading it. As we've gained a large body of followers, obviously I try and maintain the account, but as a, you can't see him on screen, a middle-aged white guy, subject to unconscious bias. Am I reaching the right kind of people? Am I excluding people without the best will in the world? Am I going the extra mile to bring in students of color, for example, who might feel a bit intimidated about the idea of sharing their ideas or the validity of their ideas for a public audience? So we're actually at the stage of kind of deconstructing this pyramid now and saying, can I no longer be the single port of editorship and how do we build a collaborative model of editorship here.
That's really helpful. I'm glad we found a little bit of extra time for that. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
Excellent. Now we're now going to the next two guest speakers are not present. So we're going to be showing very short video clips they've prepared for us. But there's an enormous amount from what Alistair was sharing there, what Katie and Glenn were sharing a moment ago. So if you've got comments, if you've got questions, do put them in the chat. We have quite a lot of lively chat going on. Keep that going on. And while we're doing that, we're going to share this. So Lillian's going to play this through her computer. And this is, so this is a very different context, Harlow College. And if we got time, when we've listened to the two videos, I'll get Dave Monk from Harlow to say a little bit about the background, how the college is supporting this. So over to Lillian.
Hello, my name is Shelley Clark and I've produced a presentation on how our fashion students use social media within their work. We created a course Instagram page, which is a platform for promotion of the student work themselves. We called it Make Your Mark, and we
Oh, that seems to have stopped.
To be honest, when I played it back earlier, it stopped here again, and I don't know if it's something.
This is part of our building community links and relationships, and it's a great opportunity to work with the brand itself. We was part of their launch, which was opened by Robert Halfam, the local MP, and our students' work was in the windows. They had gone in and selected garments for upcycling. All of their work was showcased in the windows, and key pieces were then tagged in from St Clair's Hospice, which we then liked and tagged into our own Instagram page. We also got the college to produce a video, which was a promotional piece. This went live on Instagram and Twitter, which was our other links, which then showed the students working within the studios, showed how they were accessing the resources around them. So it just brings their personal style to their work. This activity gave students ownership of their work, and being able to follow it on Instagram and Twitter was demonstrating to them how accessible they were to these social media platforms. We also had people who had purchased their garments from the shop tag photos in of them wearing them, which was another fantastic opportunity for the students to actually place their garments within the industry itself. This particular student was very grateful for this experience. We have worked on key issues, including sustainability, which the students really enjoyed. This was all promoted within our Instagram and Twitter feeds. We then got the students to do work experience within St Clair's, which they really, really enjoyed. This was then promoted, their shop windows that they actually produced. Our runway fashion show is heavily marketed both within the college platforms and our own Instagram. This particular student had the opportunity to sell her garments that she made for her collection to the public, as this was actually seen within the St Clair's Hospice Instagram platform. Promoting our student work is our key goal, and we do this heavily through the UAL platform. Through tagging UAL, our awarding body, into our Instagram and Twitter posts, they then retweet many of our stories, which is great exposure for our students. During lockdown, our students worked on challenges and competitions set by big designer brands, including Alexander McQueen. These ones in particular are actually liked and retweeted by the House of Alexander McQueen, which was fantastic exposure for the students and demonstrated to them what they could achieve. Christopher Rayburn is a fashion designer who created this particular challenge, which our students undertook, which he then liked and retweeted on his Twitter account. Celebrating student success is key to promoting the work of students. For those students going off to university, we tag their university place into our feeds, which then often follows with supportive messages from the university themselves. During lockdown, we awarded Student of the Week digital certificates, which was heavily followed by both the students and external agencies. Due to lockdown, we had no runway fashion show. However, this did not stop our students going digital. Promoting the digital event achieved great exposure for all our students. This also gave us an opportunity to tag in our show sponsors, the Water Gardens of Harlow. Once again, the marketing of this event was promoted within their social media platforms, which in turn led to nearly 400 video views on YouTube. We have our Talent Corner, where we showcase the work of students who have recently graduated from university, set mini fashion projects to all our new intake for September, and used our platforms to promote them as designers. Just last week, the students worked on a mass design activity inspired by costume designer Anna Chevalier. We tagged her in and she reposted the students' work. She has 66,000 followers. Students are feeling confident to tag designer influences within their posts, gaining exposure for themselves as well as potential work experience opportunities for the future. And lastly, the lockdown experience has been positive for many of our fashion students, being able to promote their own designs and gaining commission work through social media plugging. Thank you for listening to my presentation. Hopefully it has inspired you to use social media as a platform for the promotion of students and their long-term career goals. To follow us, go to makeyourmark_careers.
And there you see the kind of things that I tend to look at. So
some great examples there. And again, in the text chat, if you want to kind of have any comments, would that work in your area? Would it work in your subject area? How could you adapt that sort of approach? Quite different from what we've seen up to now in the other. So really lovely complementary ideas fitting in and around the other presenters today. And the final one is another one from Harlow College, Robert Anderson, in a performing arts context. And again, we thought this was interesting, that I've never heard about mindful social media before, but this is something that we will hear about here. So any questions to Dave Monk, who will kind of represent those two folk, pop them in the text chat. Lillian?
Using iPads has impacted massively because it's something that the students have with them all the time. They can video, they can voice record all their notes that the director might give them to progress their acting, to better their acting. They can photograph other actors in the room with them. They can analyse that by looking back at it. It's much more of a visual tool to get the most out of the student. They also use a lot of iMovie because the play that we were looking at this term, it deals with the dangers of social media. So using their iPad all the time, it kind of, I think, created quite a mindful approach throughout all the lessons because, well, how do I use my iPad and how do I use that to communicate with my peers, but in a safe, mindful way? Using this at such an early age, you've got now a digital tool to film. You can actually watch yourself back. You've got to make self-tapes, show reels, voice reels to get a job to help in your actual career.
Hi there, my name's David, and I'm making this video to explain to you how my tutor Rob has supported and encouraged me to use social platforms in order to prepare myself for the future. Rob recently suggested for me to create a Wix website, a site in which I can create and edit in order to publicise myself. This opportunity was ideal for me as I own a small theatre company called PMD, and this social platform that Rob suggested fully allows me to get myself out there and create a name for myself and have all of my information and goals set in one place for anyone to read at any time. On the Wix website I created, I also linked my PMD Twitter account, so you can simply click on the button that says button and it will take you straight to my PMD Twitter social media account. This is such a simple and effective way of using a social platform such as Wix. This has helped me gain attention and allow people to explore more about me and people make difference. Using these social platforms has set me up perfectly for the future, as it has helped me align my goals and put them all in one place for people to read and for myself to read in the future.
For our recent production in the Performing Arts Department, we did a show called Chat Room and a show called Sparkle Shark. Chat Room is largely based around social media and cyberbullying, and I used iMovie to make all of the trailers and make all the videos that play during the production. I was able to edit a 5-minute video within one day. It was just really easy to get all of the footage out. And using the iHub, they helped us to put one of the trailers onto a QR code to put on, because then it's again getting people to use technology like they do in the play.
Being a performing arts teacher, I am eager to explore with my learners topical plays and musicals relevant to their social experience of the world. I chose Chatroom by Enda Walsh because the subject matter of the play raised the learners' awareness of the importance of being mindful with what they put out on social media and the internet, as it creates an online digital profile that future employers may see. Through careful unpicking of the themes of the play and mindful discussion in a safe space, it prepared the learners for future progression as it elevated their mindset and taught them the importance of being kind and safe online.
There we have the two presentations.
So any other questions, pop them in there. And Ron, I think you're going to, in fact, Ron's just been put on. Yeah, so do you want to take us through the final slides then, Ron?
Well, I thought we wanted some discussion time,
Yep.
so to make up some time, I've just
Excellent.
in
Yep.
text summarised those last pages. We'll obviously do the What One Thing activity, but we kind of plan to have this open mic, so let's buy some time from the last pages to do that.
Yep.
Yeah, I thought Dave put a very good point in the chat about preparing students for the world of work, and really many of us are looking after Twitter accounts, for instance, that are promoting work-based activities. And if not that, then using personal learning networks on social media. So, you know, I think organizations that tell their academics not to use anything that is out in the real world, they're missing out, aren't they?
Indeed. One of the things I'd be really interested, we've got 45 folk in the call at the moment. We've seen some really different but really inspiring approaches today from different, from our different presenters. Could you pop in the text chat pane the approach that you think would work best or might be adapted best to your context, or that perhaps best fits the kind of things that you already do if you're already using social media with learners? And if you're doing something completely different, could you pop that in the text chat pane or open up your microphone, because we do like to hear different voices. So
can I make a little point? It's really important for sort of just to emphasise really that the students that certainly we're preparing at Harlow, and I'm sure this is true in other colleges and possibly schools, they're coming with a very sort of strong, open mind, and I think they are very creative young people. So I think their demands in HE will be very strong, very powerful. They have a powerful voice to put across. So hopefully you got that kind of impression from the work that we've done at Harlow with our students.
That's a really interesting point, the extent to which universities can provide a continuing challenge for people that have been exposed to those innovative practices. I think that's a really interesting one.
Yeah, you'd hate to have come from further education, where definitely further education has a lot more of that tactile, getting involved, getting right up to your elbows in technologies and different teaching methodologies. And they get into higher education and it's all about reading articles and writing 2,000-word essays. That would be a real disappointment, wouldn't it?
There's a danger of that, but I think in fairness our students do adapt well, but they often choose those more practical creative courses are very popular. So Alfie, who was featured in the performing arts video there, he's now gone on to carry on doing performing arts in HE at Anglia Ruskin, if my memory serves me correctly, and he will take lots of amazing ideas through with him.
Could I ask the presenters, and in fact, Dave as a sort of half presenter rep, could you respond to the points that both Ruth and Mike have made? Ruth talked about impact on workloads, And Mike and Ruth have both talked about, you know, the other elements, the risks, the privacy, those kind of areas. I wonder if Katie, Glenn, and Alistair and Dave have anything to say on those.
I have a brief thing.
Yeah.
I'll go first. Thank you. Yeah, you're right to flag it up. It is something you have to be careful with. So when we did our work, because this was still when TikTok wasn't known as well, but we were conscious there were concerns of how TikTok treated people's data. So we went through our institutional board reviews and talked to them about, you know, how can we do this? And when we created our account, it was actually done using a separate email account, and was done that in a way that by creating a special email account and therefore a TikTok account, we didn't actually have to disclose any of the students' public data, sorry, not public data, personal data, because it was done through a special email account. So we took measures to reduce that risk, but yes, you have to be careful and just ensure that you're following guidelines of university data policy, which we did. And someone actually once asked us, well, what if the student didn't want to actually download TikTok or even use it on the website? And if that did happen, we still believe they could have an input in creating the videos, but if they didn't want to even use it or anything, then we would take that away from them and use it through a specially made account, if that makes sense. And that's what I have to say on that one, if that helps.
That's very helpful, yeah.
Can I just sort of make a little comment about one of the performances that we performing arts students put on? It was a very powerful dance performance a year or so ago, which was actually focused on the dangers of social networking and in particular bullying online. We've sort of had that running around at various schools before lockdown. And it sends out an incredibly powerful message, and it's something that we reinforce. So when we're issuing out iPads, which I've just been doing a lot, to our new students, we always emphasize very strongly that it's very important that they remember that whatever they do online in social media, they're leaving a social profile, they're leaving an impression that other people can see. And if they put the wrong things out there, then that's the impression people will get of them.
That ties in rather nicely with the point Ruth's just made about their rugby team.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. There's no guarantee that any platform will not disappear at any time. And that ties in with one of our webinars on being digitally savvy. And platforms will come and go. So yes, you have to take that into account if it's a summative, if it's something that's going to contribute towards marks, you do have to be a little bit less risky, I would suggest. But for formative work, it's a winner. So I guess we want to move you on to reflecting on what you've learned and moving you on to our what's one thing exercise. So you'll notice there were a few other pages that we've skipped. Please do revisit this learning object in your own time. And you can go to this page in the chat. Ron, if you don't mind sticking the link in the chat. So don't type on the screen that I'm waving my mouse around on. Go to the page in the chat and you can type into the text wall what one thing you will do as a result of having attended this wonderful webinar with so many very talented presenters who have done quite a lot of work in the social media field.
Sorry, Lillian, if you view the message page, there's already been some posts, and also to explain in the text chat, I put a link I pasted, but it was already in my clipboard, a link to where the recording will be available, and then the second link there that ends what one thing is the link to the page that Lillian is sharing on the screen right now. So both of those are available, and the recording will be available probably early next week on the link page where you registered and I put in the text chat. If anyone has issues with posting to the text wall that we've got embedded in that page, then just share your thoughts about what one thing in the text chat of Zoom instead. But we try to use the embedded text chat so that you can reflect and think about that and still contribute after the webinar is finished. So
yeah.
you can use both methods.
Oh, lovely to see all the reflections coming in. And I'm minded, Alistair, of our conversation when we were discussing your presentation about how much anxiety there can be in actually running a social media account. We can feel it as professionals, as it were, and so much more for students who might be participating for the first time. Do you have anything to say about that, Alistair?
Are you muted, Alistair, maybe?
He looks unmuted.
We're hearing you now.
Oh, which Alistair are you talking to?
Mr. Brown, I think I was directing that to.
That's what I assumed, yeah.
Dr. Brown.
Yeah, Dr. Brown is unmuted.
You got me? No.
Yeah, that's it. We can hear you now.
Okay, sorry. I think my mic's playing up. Yes, it was just a kind of incumbency upon you as the kind of when you're managing an account to the continual ethical issues you confront and have to micromanage and think about, do I retweet something? If I don't retweet something, am I, by being silent, actually being complicit in the negative behavior? So for example, around Black Lives Matter, if I don't retweet the Blackout Tuesday square, am I being complicit in maintaining kind of racist structures? If I do retweet it, what is that in itself is that saying? So there's these continual kind of issues that you have to face on an hourly basis, I think, when you're monitoring these things at scale. It's a real anxiety inducer.
Very valid point, isn't it? It's something to be concerned about, certainly. But again, I guess we know from experience that, we need to engage students with a wide variety of media, communication modes. If we only play it safe in education, is it really education? So, but that's a discussion for another time. Thanks, Patricia. Lovely to see you here again. And Sam, hopefully you can access those videos directly from our learning object without actually having to go to TikTok. But yeah, thank you everyone here for attending and for sharing. Ron, should we?
Next session?
I'll stop the recording now, or do you want to leave it running?
I think we can stop the recording now and just...
Okay.
Okay.